Welcome to Tentative Title with Tim. This is a podcast about creativity, about process, about filmmaking, and about screenwriting. Welcome, everybody, back to the podcast. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're doing well. I hope your life is filled with productivity, creativity, positivity, all of the, ivities, I guess you can say. I hope your life is doing well. Because right now I wanted to talk about a very serious event that happened, at least here in the United States, which was the attack on the World Trade Center on 9/11. This past weekend we commemorated the 20-year. It's been 20 years since it happened back in 2001, and it shook up a lot of at least the life of Americans. It really just everything changed on that day, and it just so many things changed. But so this actually leads me to what I wanted to talk about, which was when you're writing a story, when you're making a movie. Oftentimes you'll see, especially, for movies like nowadays, you'll see based on a true story. And, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like reality, true events, carry with them a lot of drama, a lot of, interesting, lessons on, the state of humanity, on how we treat each other, on, what we get right and what we get wrong as a society. There are a lot of lessons there, but I think sometimes we kind of, as an audience member, take it at face value and believe that what we're seeing on screen is actually what had unfolded in real life. And I'm sure after if you've looked into the story that the movie is based on, that you end up finding out that that's really not the case, and for the sake of making a story even more dramatic than it actually is, sometimes characters have to be combined, sometimes events have to be switched to another location, or they have to be moved on the timeline of what actually happened in order to make it more dramatic. Mostly in real life, things don't unfold the way a movie does, and they actually can sometimes take years upon years to actually get to a resolution. And so I wanted to talk about that because of the fact that I also want to talk about the fact that when is it the right time to make a story that's based on a true story? Pointing back to the events of 9/11, it seemed like there were movies coming out about the event that I think it was 5 years later, or it just seemed like it was too soon. There were just movies coming out about what had happened, and it seemed like the U.S. wasn't quite done processing what had happened, and we were engaged in war in Afghanistan, Iraq, and it's just we were in the thick of it, and we were getting movies about what had happened in 9/11, and we were getting movies about war, the current war happening, and I don't want to say that it was necessarily a bad thing that we had those kinds of movies commenting and kind of commemorating the heroes of that day, or of the events that were happening. but something about it, just the optics of it was like, hey, you're trying to capitalize off of an event that just happened, and this doesn't. It seemed more like it was distasteful than it seemed like it was created to be informative, or to be this remembering what had happened and trying to get the stories before they were forgotten. But that might not have been the case. That's just the way I saw it at the time. But I do believe that there is a certain amount of time that needs to pass concerning a true story before we actually start to create a fictionalized version of those real events. Because we actually are, like, no matter how hard we try as filmmakers, as storytellers, to get the facts right, and we can get the facts right to a certain extent, but there comes a point where you have to make it interesting, and you have to dramatize it, and you have to build tension. And reality sometimes doesn't build tension. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, this event happened, and then a month later this other event happened, and then a month later or a year later this event happened, and then finally, like 5 years later, the entire saga of this story was finally resolved. And as an audience member, we're going to be extremely bored by that. We're going to be like, well, okay, well, I already live life. I already know that things unfold very slowly in real life. So, I want to, but as an audience member, I want to be aware of the events of the movie, or like if this was based on a true story, like, oh, I want to know the events of the true story in order to lead me to want to do more research, in order to lead me to, find, like, to kind of get more clarity on maybe what this certain event was about. And I don't know if you guys think of it the same way, but I often will just watch a movie, and then after I'll see that there's a certain point of view that has been put in place, and that when you dig deeper, you find out that there's like more details involved, or that the filmmaker had a certain perception on what had happened based off of certain reports. And then maybe like later on, after that movie has come out, that you find out, the entire public finds out more about that story, because of reporting, and because of other like evidence that comes to light, or testimony or whatever. And then you get the story doesn't seem to stop unfolding, even after it seems like it's a case, like the case is closed, on whatever story it happens to be. Like, there always seems to be this unfolding of the story over time. I'm often like surprised when I hear about a case that I thought was kind of like it was done, like it went to trial and then the person went to prison, or it seemed like what had happened was investigated, a conclusion was made, consequences were doled out, and then it's like, okay, well, that that person went to jail, or that person ended up eventually dying and from old age. But then all of a sudden, some new evidence comes to light where the public realizes that they didn't actually get the full story. And watching a movie based on a true story is not getting the full story. And I hope the audience at this point is smart enough to know that, like, when they see a movie that's based on a true story, that it's only a fraction of what is true. It's kind of like the cliff notes of the event, and maybe there's a few very specific parts of that movie that are lifted from real life, but ultimately it's a fictionalized version that is trying to be as close to fact as possible. And So if you're planning on writing one of these films or books or whatever, like if you're trying to adapt a real life event, it's very important that, for one, find out if the people who were involved in that event are still alive, because you're going to have to get in touch with them and to make sure that you have their approval to use their life story. But there's a caveat to that, because if you use if it's something that was reported in the news, that's public record, and so you can you can do a movie based on real life, based off of a news report, or a series of news reports, as long as you're not defaming the people involved, as long as it's more of a this is what happened and not a well this happened and so is the villain, because that could possibly be defamation. And if you're doing anything based on a true story, you're obviously gonna have to get a lawyer to kind of comb through it and make sure that you're not violating any any rights or anything, that you're not going to be sued for defamation because of the fact that you're taking a real life person and you're showing them in a certain light that they may see as unfavorable, and that they could possibly sue. So that's really important to do. But also, if you're writing, let's say you're adapting a book, that you're going to have to get the permission from the author, because the author is the one who's going to be that is their version of what happened, of the story. And so in a way, it's kind of like by them putting all that information together, by telling that story in their book, it's their version of that story. And so you would have to get in touch with the author or with the publishing house to find out who the author is, or to get in touch with the author in order to option the book so that you could adapt it into a show or a movie or whatever it is you're trying to do with it. If it's a story that you are passionate about, that you want to bring into a different form from what it is, from it just being a news report, or from it being a book, that you're gonna have to go through those proper channels in order to make sure that you do it properly. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you get excited about a true life event and you want to fictionalize it, or you want to try to adapt it to the screen, and you put all this work into it, and then all of a sudden someone comes along and says you can't do that because that's based off of a book that I wrote, or that's that's showing me in a bad light. I don't like that, so I'm going to sue you, kind of thing. And by that time, it's if you've gone as far as actually filming it, and it's in post production, and you actually put it out into the world, and without consulting a lawyer or anybody about the the facts of the story, then you could be in a lot of legal trouble. So for me, I like to stick to fiction as much as possible, because I know that it's a fictional story. I'm not trying to lift from real life, but I also know that there have been some true stories that I've heard over the years where I'm like, wow, I think that could be a really good movie. And another part of this could also be it doesn't have to be a fictionalized movie. Obviously, you could turn that into a documentary. You can go out there and say, I'm really passionate about finding the people involved with this story. I want to talk to them. I want to do my own investigating. I want to get the full story from those people involved. And that's another route that you can go to, and that allows for the fictionalization of that story to kind of be stripped away a little bit. Although no matter what you do in film, no matter how you present it, there's always going to be a perspective that you have to put as a filmmaker on that story. And there's a way in which you're going to tell that story that's ultimately going to leave something, not that it's going to leave something out, but it's just the nature of film is that it's or television is that there's going to be something is going to be cut for time, or there's going to be someone who's not going to want to be involved. And so you may get one side of the story, but the very important people who would have the other part of the story may decline to be interviewed, may not want your film to be made at all, and so they won't cooperate. And so it may be impossible to get a full story because of the nature of what you're trying to make a documentary on. So there are so many roadblocks, and you can try your best to get the full story. And I hopefully you do. Hopefully, you pick a subject that you're really passionate about that actually happened in real life, and it ends up being not a crime story, not kind of like a scandal or anything, but an actual true story that's positive, that people can't wait to talk about, they're falling over themselves to be interviewed just to talk about this one subject. Like if you pick something like that, then you might have people knocking down your door saying, I want to talk about this. This is important in my life, and I want to talk about it. And so you might be lucky. Who knows? Because usually when it comes to like scandals and crime, like true crime, that's when you run into people not wanting to talk, or there's certain certain aspects of those cases where you'll get one side of the story, but the other side doesn't want to talk because of something. Like it could be legal, it could be guilt, it could be any number of things. So guys, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope your week is gonna start off right. I hope it's Monday, at least here in the States. So yeah, have a good week, everybody. Once again, thank you for listening, and make sure to like, share, subscribe, all those things to get the podcast out there. I'd really like to expand the audience a bit. I'd really like to get some more interaction as well. If you got a question, if you have a topic you want me to talk about, I'm willing to do that. I want to be engaged with what you guys are thinking about, and so I can address it, and maybe I have some answers. Who knows? Or maybe you're like, hey Tim, you need to do more of this or more of that, or like stop doing this, and I'll be like, okay, like I'll consider what you say, and I'll see what I can do. So anyway, guys, thank you for listening. I'll talk to you on the next one. And also, if you want to connect with me, I have an email for the podcast. It's tentative.title.with.tim.podcast@gmail.com. Also, I have a Twitter account for the podcast where I post episodes, and that is @title_Tim. And you can find also on the Facebook page, I have a page for the podcast, so you can connect with me there. Looking forward to hearing from all of you, and until then, I'll catch you on the next one.